Ever wonder what it's like to peek behind the curtain of a huge company? I'm not talking about their slick commercials or their fancy press releases. I mean the real stuff, the blueprint they're legally required to publish. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're breaking down one of the biggest food companies on the planet, Tyson Foods, and we're using their own official playbook to do it.
Right. This is the big question, isn't it? When a company has to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, what do they actually say? I mean, they're forced to lay all their cards on the table for the US government. And that means we get to see not just the good stuff, but their weaknesses, their fears. The things that probably keep their CEO up at night.
So our main tool for this deep dive is something called the Form 10K. Now, think of it like the company's official, totally unfiltered diary for the year. And yeah, it's super dense, full of legalese, but trust me, it is packed with some seriously juicy insights.
Okay, let's get into it. First things first, if we're going to understand a giant like Tyson, we have to look at its basic structure. Its skeleton. What are the core pillars that hold this massive thing up?
And really, it boils down to these four main segments. You've got beef, pork, chicken, and then prepared foods. That's pretty much the whole operation. This is how they're built, taking the raw stuff, the animals, and turning it into all the food that ends up in our grocery carts. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. A huge part of their strategy, especially with chicken, is something called vertical integration. What does that mean? It means they control everything, from the chicken's great-grandparents to the mills that make their food, all the way to the trucks that deliver the final product. This gives them an absolutely insane amount of control over costs, and lets them operate on a scale that's just hard to compete with. And just to give you a sense of that scale, look at this number. 155,000. That's the number of cattle they can process in their facilities every single day. Yeah, and if you think that number is wild, get this. For chicken, they process 42 million birds a week. I mean, the sheer volume is just mind-boggling. Okay, so we've got the basic structure, and we've seen the unbelievable scale. Now let's follow the money. What are they actually making? And maybe more importantly, who's buying all of it? And this is where this huge, faceless corporation suddenly becomes very, very familiar. Think about it. Jimmy Dean, Hillshire Farm, Ballpark hot dogs. Yep, those are all Tyson brands. Chances are you've got some of their stuff in your fridge right now. Okay, here comes another number, and you're gonna want to remember this one, 18.7%. This might honestly be one of the most important stats in their entire 10K. So what is it? That's the slice of their total sales that comes from just one customer, Walmart. Think about that. Nearly a fifth of their entire global business depends on a single buyer. Now, that is one powerful relationship, but as we're about to find out, it's also a gigantic risk. And that brings us to, honestly, my favorite part of any 10K, the risk factors section. This is where the company is legally required to spill the beans on everything that could possibly go wrong. It's like looking at the company's nervous system, all its fears laid bare. So, no surprise here, a huge risk for them is disease. I mean, it's just part of the business. The report talks a lot about things like avian flu or African swine fever. A major outbreak could absolutely wipe out their livestock, shut down plants, and get their products banned from other countries. It's a constant threat. All right, next up is a big one, and it's something they have almost no control over: commodity prices. We're talking about the cost of what they feed their animals, mostly corn and soybean meal. Those prices can swing wildly, and when they go up, Tyson's profits get squeezed hard. And just how much of a deal is this? Well, it really all comes down to this number right here, 53%. Why that number? Because that's how much of the cost of raising one live chicken comes from feed, more than half. So if there's a drought somewhere or a trade dispute or anything that messes with grain prices, bam, it hits their bottom line instantly. And here we go, we're circling right back to Walmart. Remember that 18.7%? Well, in the risk factors section, that big number doesn't look like a strength anymore. It looks like a massive vulnerability. Putting so many of your eggs in one basket, well, it's a huge, huge risk. And they are not subtle about it either. This is a direct quote from the 10K. They say that losing Walmart could, and I quote, have a material impact on our operations. In plain English, it would be a catastrophe. Of course, in our modern world, there's another kind of threat. A company this big is basically a tech company, right? So a major cyber attack or even just a big IT system failure, that could bring their whole supply chain to a grinding halt. We're talking everything from running the machinery to managing orders.
Okay, so we've seen how they're built, what they sell, and all the things that keep them up at night. So the billion-dollar question is, how's it all working out for them? Let's take a look at the financial pulse, the final report card. Right, after juggling all of that, the global supply chain, the crazy commodity markets, that super important relationship with Walmart, how is business actually doing? What does the bottom line say? Well, this chart, which is straight from their 10K, tells a pretty clear story. That red line, that's Tyson stock. The purple one is the S&P 500, which is kind of like the average for the whole market. And as you can see, over the last 5 years, even with their massive size and power, Tyson stock just hasn't kept up. When you really step back and think about it, digging into this one document tells us a story that's way bigger than just one company. This 10K is like a blueprint for our entire modern food system. It's a machine built on mind-blowing scale, a ton of concentrated power, and this constant web of interlocking risks. And that really just leaves us with one last thing to chew on. Once you understand the anatomy of just one of these giants, you see its dependencies, its pressures, all its vulnerabilities. What does that tell you about the whole system? The one that's responsible for the food that ends up on your table.